Welcome to the Biz and Tech Podcast. My name is Blake Dowling. We are here. It is 2022. You feeling good? I'm feeling good. We have my very special friend Charlie Mars in the house today. Charlie's playing a show in Tallahassee tonight, and we look forward to having him out at Goodwood. For your cybersecurity tip today, saw this yesterday in the news. USB drives showing up on your doorstep. Looks like it's a gift card and a USB from Best Buy. It is not. It's loaded with malware. If you see this, toss it in the trash, as it's someone trying to take your information and deploy malware in your network. That is your helpful cybersecurity tip from me, Blake Dowling, today. So thanks for tuning in. Charlie, my man, it's been a long time. How are you?
I'm having a good day.
So you're having a rough week. You're spending the week 30A, another tour date in St. Pete. You told me. What's that all about?
Well, I'm a singer-songwriter in 2022, and so you're always, and with all the last couple of years have been kind of upended everything, and so I just kind of had to wing everything, and I've been winging it my whole life, but I've definitely been having to wing it the last couple of weeks and the last 2 years.
Extra winging,
and so whereas most of my life I've been playing clubs and cafes and opening for people on tours and just doing whatever I could to stay busy and make a living and all that. Most of the venues shut down, or if they didn't, people weren't really going out, so I had to kind of pivot. And for the last 2 years, I've done a lot more private parties and a lot more private events than I did previously. I've always been doing those, but it's been kind of more prevalent in the last while. And then, once COVID got going, and I kind of looked around and was like, okay, it's rough, but it seems like life is going on. And so I just was willing to do whatever to keep the lights on. So I got offered to do, just for example, this past Saturday, a couple who'd had me play at their home before asked me to come to St. Petersburg and play with them and play for them. And so I drove down there, and they put me up in an Airbnb. And I have a new dog that I got over the holidays.
Awesome.
My first dog since I was a teenager. And so that's been, I felt like I'm not getting any younger. I love dogs. I've never had my own. I'll just figure it out. Well, I've been figuring it out. It's like having a kid, I think. Everything's about, keeping them on a schedule and getting them to sleep and feeding them. And so it's been good for me. I've had more responsibility, but I've been being a touring musician and navigating, getting a dog to be situated is a lot. And so he stayed in the kennel for the first time, and that I had that typical, I don't want to leave him, he's going to be miserable. And then I picked him up, and he was happy as heck. So that was all good. And then I drove back to St. Petersburg. From St. Petersburg to Seaside, where I'm playing a songwriter festival this weekend. Mm-hmm. And then I'm playing here tonight in Tallahassee for you. And so the people that gave me a condo for the Songwriter Festival don't want a dog in there.
Oops.
Which I don't really blame them. If I had a condo, I wouldn't want somebody's mangy dog, or he's not mangy, but I wouldn't want.
Not all dogs are created or cleaned equally.
Yeah, so I don't really blame them, but at the same time, I'm kind of winging that. And so I've kind of got it figured out. And then I'm playing, I think it's probably my 8th or 9th year to play at the 30A Songwriters Festival, which I love to do. Mm-hmm. And now I'm here in Tallahassee. So yeah. And
absolutely.
I've been, Tallahassee, I first started playing in the late 90s. And then as my music life progressed, there were certain, when I was starting out, especially when you were my tour manager, I was playing a lot of college towns, and it was wild. And
Potbellies.
Yeah, Potbellies.
Still open.
What's the name of that other place that was kind of low, like a basement kind of? You walked in and it went... Floyd's.
Not open.
That place was interesting.
Very interesting.
And so there was a lot of very wild... Tallahassee was very wild in the late 90s, at least the times that I had here. And but as time has gone on, I play less college towns and more like, places that have grown an audience that has sort of stood the test of time. And I know like when I go to Atlanta, it's going to be a good crowd. I'm going to have a good night. And so sort of some of the places have fallen by the wayside that like that's not really the case. And then some places I've been going to my entire music life, because the older you get, when you go play somewhere where it's not full, you start going like, what am I doing with my life? Like, there's no one here. I'm staying in the Hampton Inn. I should have done things differently. But when it's full, you kind of living off that. It's like, oh, everything I did it meant something, and this was good. So I'm much more sensitive to the crappy nights, and so I really try to avoid them. And so there's places that I play and I'm like, you know what? I'm just not going to come here anymore because there's nobody here and I don't want to feel this pain. And
I've had that feeling with, this is a good segue to when we first met, but I did a Proud Larry show with you years ago and it's packed. And so I went back there with another band a few years later. I'm just thinking this is an artist-friendly town. No, that was a Charlie Mars-friendly town. There was 4 people in the audience and they all worked there. So we had one of those nights. So I hear you, man.
And 4 people's fine when you're 20. but when your friends have careers and they're like, oh, we're going to the Bahamas for Christmas. And I'm like, I might have should have maybe done something different here. I didn't really plan on like 2 decades later what I was going to do. I always was mostly looking 2 weeks in advance. Mm-hmm. And now here I am 2 decades later. So yeah, it's always an adventure. I still love it. And you never really know how you're going to keep making it. But then I just started to trust the process because I've made it for a long time. So I just kind of roll with it.
Well, anytime I start a new year, have my whiteboard out in my office and I'm mapping out what kind of projects we're working in IT. It's the same feeling, man. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. Starting over, cranking it up again. And that what the hell am I doing moment? Oh, I get that every January.
Oh, okay, good. I thought it was just me, but maybe I do tend to be a little bit living in my own world. So I'm glad to know that everyone is suffering along with me.
Hey, we're having our therapy moment too, because I was feeling that just last week. I caught freaking COVID and I was feeling down, reading a book. I'm like, this sucks. We all get that feeling, but until you can speak it out loud and share it, you don't know about that commonality.
Well, I mostly pretend everything's okay, but it's hard when there's 4 people at the bar and you're the main act and you're like, everything's not okay. I'm going to pretend that it is for you 4 people, but then I'm going to go back and sulk at the Hampton Inn.
And that band, they started playing covers at the end of the set to entertain the bar staff, and they killed it with Sweet Caroline, so that was nice.
Well, there you go.
All right, so 1998. I finished the University of Florida. My friends, like you were saying, they're getting real jobs, and I had no interest in a real job at that point in my life. And a guy named Rodney Stammel introduced me to Rich Walsh, who introduced me to you. And you, within about 5 minutes, said, I think this will work. And I went on the road with Charlie as his tour manager for that year. We toured the entire South, some of the Northeast, and we had an absolute ball, man. I was trying to think of some of my favorite instances from that time. Nashville was always fun. Atlanta was always fun. Mississippi was always fun. But man, it was such a crash course, not only in the music business, but in life. We were both, 21, 22, somewhere in there during that time. Gosh. We were both coming out of ATO life in our prospective college towns. Charlie went to SMU. I went to the University of Florida.
I was a frat boy.
And I didn't dress frat boy. I had my snakeskin boots back then and ripped jeans. I think that helped bridge the gap when we first met.
I got made fun of a lot in my frat because I was different, but because I could play guitar, they were kind of like, okay, he can hang around. The guitar will get you. Being able to play and sing will kind of get you through a lot of crowds that may otherwise be like, what's this guy doing here? So, yeah, that happened.
I had a similar experience being social chairman of the fraternity because I could dress like a fruitcake, but it didn't really matter because
he's the party
I invited
guy.
The girls and I provided the alcohol and I booked the talent.
So not much has changed.
It's good stuff. All right, so what do you remember about those days? 98, we toured. Remember when we opened for the Outfield in Mobile? That was cool.
I do vaguely remember that. Okay, well, first of all, I was thinking on the drive over here, when I got out of college, I basically just continued my college life. There wasn't some moment where I was like, I really got to clean up my act and get it together. It was more like, sweet, no more class. Now I really don't have to keep it together as long as I can perform. And so everything just sort of started at a peak,
Right.
and then it was like a kind of a slow collapse for about 2 years. I got in a motorcycle accident at one point, and then I got on some prescription pills. And so everything is a little hazy. There are some specifics that I do remember.
Right.
But a lot of it for me was kind of hazy. So maybe you can fill me in on some of the things that I did.
Well, let's see. We got tattoos one afternoon.
Blake and I got tattoos together from a guy who was...
He looked remotely reputable.
He was very interesting. And wasn't it the same day we wound up at the Claremont Lounge? Was that just a different day? I can't remember.
That was the same day.
It was kind of a lost weekend we had together.
Joe Bob Briggs, whatever that character's name was, he was on TNT at the time. He was out with some people.
Butch Walker was with us.
Super producer Butch Walker.
Yeah.
Colonel Bruce Hampton, for anyone
Hampton.
following the jam band scene. Quite a legend there. We checked all the boxes on that day, man.
So basically, here's how it went. We would go on tour all week, and then on Sunday we would get back. And then on Sunday nights at Smith's Old Bar in Atlanta was like locals night or whatever, and all the musicians and all the staff from everywhere would go to Smith's Old Bar.
Because that was our variety night.
And Blake lived across from Smith's Old Bar.
Walking distance, yes.
Walking distance. And he had a loft bedroom that... did someone was always gone, or it was vacant? What was the deal?
It's a little fuzzy, but I believe the young lady that lived up there got tired of living with me, as you can imagine. And then another guy moved in from California, and he was a little traveling something. So yeah, it was pretty much your spare room.
Yeah, it was kind of my spare room. And then rather than go home where I lived, I would go party all night at Smith's Old Bar. And then Blake and I would get back to the house at like 4 a.m, and we would watch Tombstone together on the couch, and then we would quote it pretty much line by line.
That is
after
required.
a certain period of time.
And my roommate that did live there really enjoyed that. About 5 a.m., the Charlie's down by the water walking on water. I messed up the quote. But yeah, we did it good back then. It was a good movie.
I remember one night I didn't even make it to your house, and I had a van, and I crawled in the back of the van. Well, prior to that, I had blacked out, and then the staff wrote stuff all over my face, like just embarrassing things. They scribbled all over my face.
They were very hands-on at Smith's.
And then I went to the car and passed out, and then the car got towed. And so I woke up. Last thing I remember was being at the bar. Next thing, I'm in a parking lot with like 1,000 other cars in the van, in the back. Don't know how I got there or why I'm there.
But they're trying to tow you while you're in it, right?
Oh, they did tow me. They towed me from Smith's Old Bar to this lot outside of Atlanta. So then I realized that I have a key to the van. So I climb in the front seat with this writing all over my face, and I look in the mirror and I realize that I'm not going to repeat what they wrote, but it was not very friendly.
I recall it vaguely.
And then, I'll admit, I was not the easiest person to deal with at the time, so I don't hold any grudges. But I got in the car and then drove the car to a gate, and then told the guy, like, I'm supposed to be delivering this vehicle. And he was looking at me like, with the writing on your face? Like, what? And then he opened this gate, and I drove out and drove home.
And you're coming from the wrong side of the gate. You're not supposed to be coming from the inside.
So this all is just another weekend in the life of Charlie Mars and Blake Dowling on the road together, prior to us being more law-abiding citizens.
Indeed. I remember Dawn and a couple of the staff members at Smith's, when we'd walk in, whether it was 2 a.m. or 2 p.m, they'd give us that look. Like, oh, here they come. But man, those are some good people and some great times.
And I've been sober from alcohol for 22 years.
Congratulations.
So you were around there. You were right there at the peak of the what is this the rock and roll life for me. I didn't really have the constitution to make it. I wasn't a lifer for the party, but I've been a lifer for the craft.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your craft.
Okay.
I put together an article for the Tallahassee Democrat about some of the tours and some of the experiences you've been on.
Oh, you've
had a lot of successes over the years. I really enjoyed your story on stage. Last time I saw you perform was Fifth and Thomas here in Tallahassee, I believe, or maybe it was 38 Songwriters. I don't remember which year was which.
Yeah.
I have not been sober for 22 years, so things are still a little fuzzy sometimes.
Yeah, well, some of us are better at handling their liquor than others. You must be doing okay if you've made it this long.
I'm trying to minimize, and live a healthy lifestyle as much as possible. But anyway, I remember you told this story, and it freaking cracked me up. It was a Jimmy Buffett story, and about maybe you being invited to be in his Broadway musical. Is that accurate? What went down there?
Well, I knew his niece.
Okay.
She's from New Orleans. She was dating a friend of mine. And then I guess they were talking and she told him about me. And then he went and listened to a bunch of my music because he was looking for potential people to play the lead role in his Broadway musical or in his musical Escape to Margaritaville.
Okay.
And so I was down at the beach on Highway 30A, just writing songs, and I got a voicemail I saw a call from Palm Beach, Florida, which I didn't recognize the number, so I usually don't answer, and I got a voicemail, which I still have. So it was Jimmy Buffett, and he said...
so it's not his agent. It's
him.
JB himself.
Yeah. And then he said that he had a proposition for me, and that he'd been listening to my music, and to call him on his French phone because he was going to be in Tahiti for 2 weeks. And
Tough life.
And I remember thinking, I hope this leads to me making a lot of money, and I would like to have a French phone myself. And so I called him back, and he told me about this musical that he was doing. And then, of course, I was like, yeah, that sounds cool, especially at the time it sounded to me like maybe I would get to be in one place for a while, and that sounded good. And I liked Jimmy Buffett. Was my first concert I ever saw with Jimmy Buffett, Clint Black, and Little Feat at the Mobile stadium. There was a stadium in Mobile that I saw.
They don't do lineups like that anymore, man. That is freaking gold.
I know. And so he said, look, I'm playing in Birmingham. I think it was like in a week or something. I don't remember exactly, but why don't you come over and meet me? And I had actually met him once before in Palm Beach, Florida, with a friend of mine who's a restaurateur there. And I remember my friend wanted him to come and meet me because we're both from Mississippi. Sure. And I remember he said, he walked to the table, he said, so I'm from Mississippi, you're from Mississippi, what else you got? And I was like, okay, all right, we're going to do some smack talking. So we did, we had fun. And then I don't know if he remembered meeting me then or not, but this was a few years later that he had called me. So
right.
Knowing him, he probably did remember. But so I went to Birmingham to Oak Mountain. We met at some restaurant, and then I was supposed to just have lunch with him, and he said, do you want to come to the show? And I said, yes, Jimmy Buffett, that sounds good. And then he said, well, we were in the limo or whatever it was, like a SUV thing. He said, do you want to sit in with the band? And I said, yes, I would like that. And then he said, do you know Changes in Latitudes? And I said, everybody knows Changes in Latitudes, Jimmy Buffett. And so when we got to the venue, I got in on the YouTube on my phone and the bathroom, and then learned Changes in Latitudes from some kid on YouTube because I had basically acted like I knew it already. And so then I had it down, and so I was kind of like hanging with the crew and all this stuff. And then someone came and said, hey, Jimmy wants to see you. Jimmy wants to see you. So I go in there, and he's waking up from a little pre-show nap. he said, let's play through Changes in Latitudes. And so we're playing it, everything's good. And then he stops singing and he's just looking at me and he says, sing it. And I was like, well, you said play it. And he goes, well, yeah, but I said, look, I got it. Let's just get out there and do it. And he was kind of like, okay. And then all of a sudden they were like, Jimmy, you're up. And so he just kind of rolled out and I was like, oh, so I get back on the YouTube in the bathroom and learn the lyrics to the song, which took me like forever because it was a lot of, he was on stage. I felt nervous. There was like 30,000 people at this thing
that
or whatever.
amphitheater in Pelham is
big.
huge.
Yeah, big.
That's no little room.
So I'm about to have to walk out there and do this whole thing. And I feel like this is kind of like a prequel to my audition. You know, like if I do good, I might get the Broadway part and I'll like know where my life is headed. And then I won't have to play these coffee shops so much or whatever.
Right.
So I get out there, and of course I get out there, and there's a huge prompter right at my feet with all the lyrics on it for him that had every lyric. And so I felt like I crushed it. I felt like I did good, and my buddy like high-fived me afterwards, and I'm thinking, I'm going to get this Broadway part. It's going to be amazing. So then like 2 weeks after that, I go to New York City. In between that and going to New York, I decided that I needed to look the part, right? So I decided to go to Florida and get a tan, hang out on the beach, you know.
Flowered shirt,
this was my
excuse,
my excuse for going to the beach.
Okay.
So I roll up in New York where it's like I'm unseasonably tan. Let's put it that way. Like I look like Donald Trump. I was freaking orange. And I get in there and they're all like, whoa, like this guy's tan. And then I played 3 songs and that went well, but then I had to act out 2 scenes, Broadway style, you know, acting, which I have 0 experience doing.
Lots of hand moving.
Just like it, and it was kind of, I mean, no fault here, but it was a little bit cringy. Like it was this romantic scene where this guy's like trying to talk this girl into joining him on an island and living on island time, and she's like works in Manhattan, and she's like, the whole thing was just a little bit like a little unrealistic.
It's got a cult vibe too.
And so I don't think I was that great at that part. And so I did not get the part. Mm-hmm. Some Broadway, like experienced Broadway actor who'd done like a bunch of Broadway got it, which it makes sense. And then
he was probably less tan.
Yeah, he was way less tan. No one beat me on the tan. I got the 10 on the tan. So then during COVID, I was going through my voicemails, you know, because I was like I was going to get super organized. You know, during COVID, I think everyone was like, I'm going to clean out the house.
I cleaned out everything.
Yeah, I'm going to get
shed, the closet,
organized.
I painted everything.
So I was deleting stuff on the couch. Like that was my version of like a lazy man's getting organized. And
digitally organized.
Yeah, digitally. And so then I ran across the voicemail again, and I was reminded that I wanted a French phone, and I wrote a song for my new album called My Tahitian Phone that is about the whole thing. About the first line says, "Oh, Jimmy, give me some of that money. Come on, man, you're almost a billionaire. Break me off a little bit of that stash, and I'll write it in a song, and you can call me on my Tahitian phone."
That's awesome.
So the whole thing was about like, Jimmy, give me some of your cash, and I can have a Tahitian phone too. So basically, out of the whole thing, I got this one song called My Tahitian Phone, and a good story.
That's wicked, man.
So there's my Jimmy Buffett story.
All right, so let's stay along that same vibe.
Okay.
Proudest moment of your career. We've talked about touring. I didn't mention you toured with REM. You've toured with the Dixie Chicks. You've written some killer songs. You played in some of the coolest venues in the country. You played with some awesome musicians over the years. Mm-hmm. But what's that moment? What's that proud moment? If you could name one, that's a tough question. What you got?
Well, I mean, there's the big ticket stuff, and I can give you a couple of those. But really, my proudest moments are when I can tell that the song that I wrote affected someone's life in a really meaningful way, whether they were going through a hard time with a loved one or lost someone, or they were getting married and wanted me to play at their wedding. Like, these are the, and I have a lot of those. Or in St. Petersburg, I played for a couple where the husband has cancer, and I'm one of their favorite artists, and and he's going to have a surgery. In fact, he's already gone to have it. Wow. And so, they're being able to touch people's lives on a really personal level, where there's not a bunch of accolades or trophies or money involved, or where you're just doing it and you touch people. And when I write the songs, that's where they come from, is a place where I'm touched. And so that would be the first and foremost. That's why I really do it. Those are the things I remember. But then probably I got to tour with REM on one of their last North American tours, and they were kind of my childhood heroes, and I played on stage with them every night. That was a big thing.
That's my wife's favorite band.
And then
have you ever seen their 4-hour freaking MTV VH1 special that goes into so much detail about their career? It's really cool if you haven't seen it.
I have. I've seen all the REM stuff. And then on the first Dixie Chicks tour, I guess they're just the Chicks now, but then they were the Dixie Chicks. It was their first North American tour since all the Iraq stuff, and when they had kind of they were like the first people that got canceled, right?
Right.
And so that was stadiums, and I was solo acoustic, and it was the first time I realized that, like, in Canada, people show up early and they're very respectful and quiet. Unlike an American audience where people kind of milling in and, everybody's finding their seats for the opening act.
Throwing beers.
In Canada, they're there and you can hear a pin drop. And so I tell a lot of stories, and the stories, I realized, like, all of a sudden 50,000 people started laughing. And so it doesn't really matter if it's a coffee shop or a stadium. If you have an audience's attention and you got a good story, it can work. And so some of the energy those nights were incredible. And then, I've played on stage with Willie Nelson and Steve Earle, and done tours with Citizen Cope and KT Tunstall and Tedeschi Trucks Band and Chris Christopherson. And
how's Derek as a guitar player live?
Amazing. So I've just gotten so many of those things, and some of these beautiful theaters and huge audiences that I've never been able to draw, but got to kind of piggyback on. Those were cool times. But and then just hearing my song on the radio somewhere, or I've had a million, like, some song on a TV show or movie, and you're like in the movie theater and you hear your song, and it kind of all makes it
right.
worthwhile. So, but I guess the one moment would be like I started with, just like being grounded and realizing that you've really touched somebody's life. That's more than any of the like big stuff.
Yeah, your song Silver Buttons, that's the name, right?
That's the song, yeah.
Yeah, that one always got me, man. That was it reminded me of the journey, whether it was from middle school to college and professional life. That was a special tune. Mm-hmm. Nice work. So along those same lines, you mentioned a lot of cool entertainers, a lot of cool people.
Yeah.
Who's your fave celeb you've met out there on your journey?
My favorite.
And you can only name one.
My favorite celeb.
And it can't be Jimmy Buffett.
Okay, my favorite celeb that I've met on my journey. Oh my gosh, I've met so many.
And you've dated a celebrity too.
This is true.
That's probably not going to be your answer since it's an ex, right?
You don't want to. You can't. That can't be your favorite. You can't really. You can't use your ex-girlfriend as your favorite. But she is one of my favorites.
And Charlie dated the young lady on the show Weeds. Julia, is that her name?
Mary Louise Parker. Anyway,
see, I wasn't even close.
We don't have to dwell on that. So I would have to say it's probably Steve Earle.
Steve Earle.
He's a mess, and he's just a big. But when I lived in New York City, I spent a lot of time with him. We did a lot of fun things. He's such a character. He's a great storyteller. He's got more stories than anybody I've ever been around. Him, and probably, I really liked John Malkovich. He was making a movie called Red with and Bruce Willis too.
That's a good movie.
Red. So my girlfriend was in Red, so I was just hanging out on the set a lot.
That's right, she was in that.
And so Bruce Willis, they did 2 of them, and so I met Bruce Willis and John Malkovich and hung out with them a lot. and they were fun. Me and Bruce Willis had some funny times. So yeah, I forget about those things, but yeah, that happened.
Those are awesome answers. Rock solid. So you mentioned a couple obstacles. You mentioned a couple successes. What's the biggest obstacle you've overcome in your life?
The biggest obstacle I've overcome in my life, just probably my own selfish nature. Learning how to care more about others and do more for others and be more mindful of other people's struggle and not so concerned about my own. I think when you're young and you're starting out in rock and roll, you're just trying to make it, and it's just kind of like you just think that like, how do I unscrew a light bulb? I hold the light bulb and let the rest of the world revolve around me.
Right.
And so now I think that it's more meaningful. But I think overcoming that in all of its various forms, whether it was alcoholism or whatever thing you do that's just kind of like makes you feel good and is kind of selfish, just moving through all that stuff and getting to the light and getting towards a more just giving, loving, honest, willing to go through the pain to get to the good stuff kind of place. I think that's still probably my thing that's hardest to overcome, and it's the thing that am proudest of overcoming a lot in that area. Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Producer Josh and I have been doing this show for like 3 years now, and I think that's the most sincere answer to that question. We always put that question in. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So we're getting near close time today. Let's talk artists that inspired you to get started. I just read a book, not the Lemmy book that I'm giving you, but another book called Nothing But a Good Time. Guess what that's about? It's about 80s metal. My stepdaughter gave it to me.
Okay.
It talks, it's really interesting. I'll give you that one too. It's instead of like being story driven, it's basically, here's a topic, the rainbow. And 20 people's opinion of the rainbow.
Okay.
So like Skid Row, Atlantic Records, Jason Flom, boom, go. And like producers' comments, radio comments. It's really interesting. But the drive, and you mentioned, the willingness to work. All these bands, when 89 hit, 91, and glam metal went out the door, these guys are like, are we willing to work or not? Rat's like, yeah, we're going to keep working. Skid Row kept working and still working.
Yeah.
Today, and I'm not trying to gear you to say Motley Crue's your favorite band, because we used to watch, along with Tombstone, a lot of Motley Crue videos in the day.
You made me watch a lot of Motley Crue videos.
But what artists inspired you? Because not just, as a fan of a band's growing up, but what bands inspired you to make this your craft, to make this your trade? Who's on that top of that list?
Well, to make it my lifestyle, I would be remiss if I didn't say that, like, when I was a teenager, a young, like a little kid, and MTV videos were popping, and I would sit in front of the TV in my little town where I lived in Mississippi, and I would just watch like Poison videos and Motley Crue videos, and I would think, I want to do this. I want to do what these guys are doing. I want to be on stage and be playing guitar and have girls everywhere and be on a tour bus. Like, this seems way more kick-ass than what I'm doing here in my town in like the middle of nowhere.
And that's Laurel, Mississippi, correct?
Yeah. Okay. And so, I always kind of had that, like, I want to party kind of thing. But then when I got a little older and it became like a craft thing, and I thought, okay, well, how am I going to do this? It was definitely like classic singer-songwriters like Neil Young and Jackson Browne. I would say probably those two are the biggest. I just loved acoustic guitar, and I loved good songs. And so I always wanted to do that. And so I didn't really like lean into the like heavy metal or all the stuff that I had been sort of the energy of it I liked, and I liked it seemed fun. But when it came to like actually doing it, I kind of was more classic. And I think, I'd like to think that that's sort of timeless. And so, I'm not like teasing my hair and like putting like black stripes under my eyes and having to go to some like legacy concert with a bunch of like boomers, I feel like I still get to kind of like do something that's still meaningful. No sliding on those guys
You're
who
not
are
knocking
working.
Nikki, are you?
I mean, I'm knocking them a little bit. It's a little bit. I mean, I think when it comes to that stuff, it's a kind of a young man's game. Like nobody wants to watch a bloated, obese boomer like singing "Girls, Girls, Girls." But I mean, you might, but most people don't.
As Rachel said in Skid Row at the end of the book, he goes, "Listen, man, I'm 62 years old, and I sing Youth Gone Wild every night." He's like, "I'm a living freaking character of a joke, but it's what I do, and I love it." And I was like, you know what? He owns it. At least he's that. Nikki Sixx, I don't think, owns it. But
yeah, so there you go.
All right.
Those are, and then I'd have to include my Frank Sinatra was one of my all-time favorites, and he was such a classic. And when I was a kid, my family would listen to him in the holidays. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
all right, awesome. Charlie, great to have you on the show today. Where can people learn more about Charlie Mars? What's your web address?
I have kind of a janky website. It's charliemars.com. It has like T-shirts and CDs if you want to order stuff, which that's always good when people do. And then I have Instagram, which is Charlie Mars with 3 S's at the end of it. And then I have Facebook. Okay. So if you want like Big Brother knowing everything you do, then just follow me on Facebook. And
your dog.
And my dog Kudzu, which is he's just kind of on my Instagram.
Right.
I think it's kind of cringe to have your dog have his separate Instagram. So I haven't. Do you do that?
Well, actually, it's for my wife and I's cat.
Oh, your wife and his
So
cat.
we definitely have our own. Okay. Peter the Destroyer.
Maybe I should do Kudzu the Corso, but
well, it's got to be funny. Peter the Destroyer. He destroys shit. That's
Peter
the whole
Destroyer
point.
is good. Okay, so that's where you can find me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, tonight, Goodwood, Charlie Mars will be playing 30A Songwriters Festival. Charlie will be playing. Thanks for tuning in today to the Biz and Tech Podcast.
Biz.
We'll see you next time. Thank you, Charlie. Good to see you, brother.
Thanks, Blake.